Yeah, in the book that I wrote called "What the Owners of Power Don't Want You to Know," I was trying to see if there was some around here, but there's not. I write something which is similar to something I read at your book, the Tyranny of Merit, which I call the effect Mr. Jack in Brazil, Seu Zé. It's a nickname, like very common here in Brazil, which is the rich people. They search for someone that was born very poor, and then like he studied, he passed to some university, he entered on a job, he did well, and now he's rich. And then he get which this example, which is statistically irrelevant, but they get this example and say, see, if you want, you can make it. He studied hard, he worked hard, and now he has a good life. So the problem's not the system, the problem is you. But in Brazil, most of the poor people, they work 50, 60 hours a week. They spend like 3 to 4 hours a day on public transportation. They're the ones that produce wealth on the fabrics and on the fields. But this is not considered merit because they don't see their life getting better off. And the problem is the left wing, not only the people, the conservatives, the right wing, but the left wing politicians, they seem to have adopted the meritocratic paradigm as a given. So yes, their discussion is that we're not given the right conditions for a meritocratic world, but they don't question the meritocracy. Do you see that? I saw in your book, but you see that too, right? It's kind of like the left, the progressive politicians, they fell in the trap of meritocracy.
Yes, and this is a major theme of my book. I am critical of mainstream parties and politicians of the center left and the center right for just this reason, Eduardo, because in a way it goes back to the 1980s when Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan won office, arguing explicitly that government is the problem and markets are the solution. They offered a vision of unfettered laissez-faire capitalism as the solution. Now, even when they were succeeded on the political scene by center-left parties, by Bill Clinton in the United States, by Tony Blair in Britain, Gerhard Schroeder in Germany, what these center-left parties did was they did not challenge the fundamental premise of the market faith of the Reagan-Thatcher years. They did not challenge the assumption that markets and market mechanisms are the primary instruments for defining and achieving the public good. They did not challenge it. They accepted and they consolidated that faith. They softened its harsh edges by trying to strengthen the safety net somewhat. But mainly what they offered was a greater emphasis on meritocracy, on mobility. I call it the rhetoric of rising. And they took as their political project perfecting the meritocracy so that the race would start, so that everyone could start the race at the same starting point. They didn't question the idea of society as a race. Another metaphor to see what they missed is the image of a ladder. What they offered is a political project, and by they I mean the mainstream center-left parties in most Western democracies. They said, we will help everyone have an equal chance to clamber up the ladder of success. But they didn't notice, or they didn't deal with the fact that the rungs on the ladder were growing further and further apart. So theirs was too limited a political project and an inadequate response to the deepening inequality. And so what we need now, I think, is an alternative mission. I think in particular center-left parties need to rethink their mission and purpose, because what's happened in the absence of an effective response to inequality, and what's resulted from their rhetoric of rising, is that working people have been alienated from center-left parties and have been led to embrace right-wing authoritarian populist figures who offer hyper-nationalism, hostility to immigrants. And the center-left parties wonder how this happened. One of the reasons it happened is that they missed an insult that was implicit in the rhetoric of rising. They said, we're offering a more fair starting point for everyone. So why shouldn't low-income voters be in favor of that? Why shouldn't working people be in favor of that? But here's the insult they missed. If your main response to inequality is, say, improve yourself, go get a university degree, the insult is this: if you don't have a university degree, and if you're struggling in the new economy, your failure must be your fault. That's the insult implicit in a single-minded focus on the rhetoric of rising, on meritocracy and mobility as an answer to inequality. And so it's no wonder that by 2016, the Democratic Party in the United States, the Labour Party in Britain, the Social Democratic parties of Europe were more attuned to the interests and the values and the outlook of the professional classes, the credentialed classes, the well-educated classes, than they were to the interests and outlook of the working class voters who once constituted their base. And we saw this. We saw the divide in the vote between those with and without a university degree in the election of Trump. After one primary election victory, Trump said famously, "I love the poorly educated." He understood this. The educational divide in politics was created in large part by the center-left parties missing the insult they were delivering to working people. And it isn't only a matter of inequality and wage stagnation and job loss, because what they missed was they didn't see that work is not only about making a living. Work is also about honor and recognition. It's about the ability to contribute to the common good and to be recognized and honored for having done so. And when people feel that the work they do on those long rides, as you mentioned, Eduardo, on the buses or on the subways to work, and the hours that they work, when people feel that the work they do and the sacrifices that they make are not honored and respected and recognized by the wider society, when all the prestige goes to hedge fund managers or those who work in speculative finance, then there's something deeply demoralizing about that. And the sense of social exclusion runs deep. This, I think, not only the inequality in economic terms, but the lack of recognition and honor and appreciation leads to the resentment, to the sense of humiliation that makes right-wing authoritarian populist figures attractive, because they run against, they criticize these elites. And they offer a kind of pride. It's a false pride in the end, but they do offer a kind of revenge against the elites that becomes very attractive to people who rightly sense that elites look down on them.